Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with another card for the current Color Throwdown Challenge, of which I am the hostess this week. And I will have a link to that challenge in my blog post, which will be linked directly below the video. So I'm doing my current favorite type of mixed media. So I have a piece of Canson XL watercolor paper, and I put a bit of anti-static powder on that. And then I'm using the hand-lettered Friend background stamp. And I'd ink that up with clear embossing ink, and then pressing that watercolor paper into it, just using my fingers. I'm not worried about it being perfect. And then I'm going to coat that with clear embossing powder. Tap off the excess, make sure to get the whole thing coated, and then I'll melt that with my heat tool. So once that is melted, I'm going to do some ink smushing. I don't know, it's fun. It turns out different every time. Like I've said this about ink smushing over the years. You can use the same colors, the same cards, and do the same thing over and over, and it will always turn out different because it just does. But it's been fun mixing it up with different background stamps and stencils and all those things. So the inks I'm using are CELERY and FAIRWAY Positively Saturated inks. I just smushed those onto my nonstick craft mat and then sprayed it with water. Smush that watercolor paper right into it. And then I'm just drying in between the layers. I'm not worried about being perfectly dry, but you want it dry enough so that you can actually layer it, because if it's still too wet, you're not going to get layers of, that texture and splatter and all that stuff. It's just going to be kind of a smooth whatever. Again, it depends on the look you're going for, but I dry it in between the layers. And then I actually took at the end here just my piece of paper towel that I was using to kind of sop up some of the excess, and I rubbed it across the background because that also picked up any of the ink that was sitting on top of all of that heat embossed lettering, so it just helped it to stand out a little bit more. And then of course I'm going to add splatter. I used my white gouache, stuck that on the craft mat, watered it down, splattered it all over. You can never have too much splatter. I love it. So this I let dry before I go on to the next step, which is to use a stencil. And I pulled out another oldie but goodie favorite for this one. This was the spring Boho circle stencil that I did. I don't even know how many videos I've used this stencil on. I was obsessed with it for a while there. And then I was flipping through my stencils before I started this card, and I was like, oh yeah. So it had to get used. So I just placed that on top of the background, and I used crackle paste, as also I'm just obsessed with. It's just fun. So applied the crackle paste with my little palette knife here. Just did a thin layer. Also because the thinner the layer, the faster it dries and does all its crackly goodness. However, once I was done applying it, I removed the stencil. I decided to sprinkle some glitter into this. Just cause, why not? Because while this paste is still wet, it can hold on to this glitter. I didn't dump a ton of glitter on it. I'm just picking up little bits and just kind of pinching, glitter and sprinkling it a little bit here and there onto this background. So I'm just using Simon's Unicorn Dust glitter for this. And then off camera, once everything's dry, I just take a fan brush and brush over that background, and it removes any of the excess glitter, and it's good to go. So I don't have glitter, falling all over the place. It's contained in the paste, and then the excess, like I said, once it's dry, brush over it, you're good to go. So I've set everything aside to dry. And then my main image is from the Simon Says Stamp Hibiscus Blooms stamp set. This stamp set came out last year at some point. I can't even remember. It is a beautiful set, and I don't even think I've ever used it before, and it's gorgeous. So I pulled it out because it was perfect for this color challenge, and I stamped this big hibiscus image onto another piece of that same Canson watercolor paper, and I stamped it with just VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I'm using more positively saturated inks to do my watercoloring. So the main pink colors are Bubblegum, which is the lighter pink, and then Taffy, which is the much more intense kind of plummy pink color. And I go in first with just clean water And then I'm doing the darker color, you know, closer to the center of these flowers. Right now on the video, this is slightly sped up, just a teeny little bit. So this is, you know, normal. This is super sped up. I do not color this fast. Sometimes I wish I could, but when it comes to things like watercolor, I just enjoy the process. You know, I just sat and zoned out and just added color. And, you know, I layered in those colors, so I really got that intense plummy pink. And then I took that lighter color and I painted that all around the outsides of these flowers and kind of went back and forth and picked up both and got, you know, that modelly texture sort of look that I'm really loving when it comes to coloring florals. And then I used a little bit of Sunbeam ink to do the stamens. And then I use those same two greens that I used at the beginning, the Celery and the Fairway. I use those to do all the greenery. So, and I didn't even notice that my camera had shut off. So, yeah, that just happens sometimes. But once everything was dry, I used some of the residual ink to add splatter, of course. So a little bit of pink splatter, a little bit of that taffy splatter. And then I pulled out some Perfect Pearl powder, which I haven't used in forever. Me and all my splatter, I haven't been adding like a shimmer splatter to everything like I normally do. I don't know what's wrong with me. But now that I remembered I have this, it's now back on my desk where it belongs. So yeah, a little bit of Perfect Pearl powder on my work surface, mixed it with water, added the splatter, and then I'll add a bit of white gouache to this as well. And I'll just mix it in with what's left of that Perfect Pearl little blob there. And same thing. I've said this before. The more water you add to the white gouache, the less intense it will be when it dries. It won't be like stark white. So yeah, that's what I was going for because I really like the texture. It'll have a bit of shimmer, all that fun stuff. And then I let everything completely dry. And then I taped the coordinating wafer die into place and die cut that. And then my background, once it was completely dry, I die cut that with one of Simon's basic rectangle wafer dies. And then I pulled out some of my doodle twine that I've been hoarding for years now. I'm nearly out of this lighter pink color. And it was just perfect for like the lighter pink on this card. So I wrapped that around this card front and then held a little knot in place with my reverse tweezers. And then did my fiddling back and forth till I get the bow the way I want it. I purposely had it placed so it's going to peek out like right below the blooms. So again, more fiddling just to get it where it needs to be. And then once I've got that in place, rather than use foam tape, I could have used foam tape for this, but for whatever reason, I was just like, no, I don't feel like it. But I'll use foam tape on everything else. But anyway, I just put blobs of Craft Tacky glue. I would never apply this much glue if this was just regular cardstock. You don't need it. But this is really thick watercolor paper. The background is also thick watercolor paper with, you know, crackle paste, all the things. And I'm on top adhering this on top of that twine. So I can get away with using a thicker amount of glue to really make sure things are adhered. But if you use that much glue and you're using just like regular cardstock, that's why you'll get like it'll start bending and curling, and sometimes the adhesive will show through. You can see it through the cardstock. It's 99% of the time too much adhesive, because with liquid glue you just don't need very much. So hopefully that also is a good tip. I don't know. It's really late. I'm tired. It's just been a day. But anyhow, I set that aside to dry as well. And then I repositioned the stamp in my MISTI with the card base so that I could ink it up and stamp it with that light pink bubblegum ink onto the inside of my card. So I stamped that, and then I'll reposition the card base a second time here so that I can line up and stamp a sentiment from this same Hibiscus Blooms stamp set. And the sentiment I inked up and stamped with that Nocturne ink. And then, yeah, I used Big Mama foam tape on the back of the card front panel. Also makes it easier to adhere something where you've got twine on it, twine, ribbon, etc. That's also why I use foam tape, because it just, things adhere better that way. So I put that onto my card front. And then I went through my stash and found the perfect shade of light pink pearls to add to this. These are Trinity Stamps Pearly Pink Baubles. So I sprinkled those throughout the card front, adhered them into place with little dabs of craft tacky glue, and then I'm going to pair this card with one of Simon's metallic cotton candy envelopes. And then I'm also going to turn the flashlight on my phone so you guys can kind of pick up the glitter and the shimmer. Thankfully, my camera actually went out of focus because that's one of the easiest ways to pick up glitter. So you can see the glitter kind of trapped there in the crackle paste over the stencil. And then I've got that shimmer splatter from the Perfect Pearl powder. You got the shine from the heat embossed sentiment background. I got all kinds of stuff going on this card, and it was fun, and it's bright and like springy, and yeah. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll link to the color throwdown challenge. I will have a supply list. I'll link to all the supplies I used, so you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, hit the bell for notifications, all the good things. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.